Good evening, everyone. Good evening, India. Good evening to Salesforce Ohana. Welcome, and we wouldn't be Salesforce if we didn't open with gratitude. So thank you all for making time on this Tuesday evening to attend this. We really appreciate and value your presence. Thank you to our partners at Pride Circle for putting together this wonderful bouquet of events. I hope you're all able to derive value from this. And thank you to our employees who work all day at Salesforce and still make time to attend sessions like this. So with that, we welcome you to today's event, which is to build support networks to beat isolation and loneliness. We have two excellent speakers. Please ask them questions. The objective is to really keep this as interactive as possible. All our sessions are recorded and they will be hosted on a microsite on the Pride Circle website at the end of this whole series. We'll make an announcement when that happens. My name is Francis and I lead Outforce India. Outforce is Salesforce's LGBT ERG. We're also one of Salesforce's oldest and largest ERGs, and our charter and remit is to advance LGBT equality using the brand and prestige and cloud of Salesforce wherever possible. Our CEO believes that you can do well and do good. Some of you may be familiar with Salesforce's reputation, and they say values create value, and we've strived very hard to be ranked in all the lists that matter. And as you can see, we've been in the HRC list and the Forbes list for diversity. And our initiatives in measures like this is what causes us to partner with organizations like Pride Circle to bring you this bouquet of events. And with that, I would like to hand over to Ram. Thank you, Ram.
Thanks, Francis. A very warm welcome to everyone. I am Ram, co-founder of Pride Circle. Welcome to Beating the Queer-antine Blues. It's a series of 4 webinars, one gatekeeper suicide prevention training, which is done by SPIFF, and a helpline. I'm just mentioning the details of the helpline. It is available free of cost for the whole week. It's from 18th of May till 24th May, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. There are LGBT friendly counselors, so do feel free to reach out to them. Do share this information with your friends and family who may need the support right now. Thank you so much for joining in today. And today we're going to talk about building support networks to beat isolation and loneliness. Now, before I introduce my wonderful speakers today, do you want to just share in your chat if you have experienced loneliness? I personally do battle with that a lot. So if you have experience of loneliness, just type a +1 in the chat box. Thank you for sharing that. It's a pretty common theme, it looks like. And we all battle with that. And the isolation just makes matters worse. So introducing our brilliant speakers for today, Shalini Rao, her pronoun she, her, is a counseling psychologist specializing in gestalt feminist psychotherapy and is a certified queer affirmative mental health practitioner. She has a Master's of Arts degree from California Institute of Integral Studies, San Francisco, and is currently practices independently in Bangalore as a consultant. She has been facilitating self-exploration programs for children and adults since 2007 in varied cultural spaces, including university, classrooms, protest sites, rescue homes, summer camps, and a US state prison. Her 10 years of experience in theater informs her inclusive facilitation practices. A warm welcome to you, Shalini.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Samir. He has worked in technology for over 18 years with organizations like Bank of America, Standard Chartered, IBM, and Accenture. But as his passion is to work with people, he has completed his counseling certification by the US Department of Health. He is a strong proponent that healthy mind builds healthy relationships. He has worked as HIV and STD counselor for over 10 years and has been a peer counselor for more than 15 years. A very warm welcome to you, Samir.
Thank you, Ram. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Today, we're going to delve in a conversation about being locked down and loneliness around that, and the fact around being locked down with homo or transphobic parents, friends, siblings. We'll also touch upon domestic violence and the methods and resources to deal with them. So please keep all your questions targeted to these topics, and please use the chat box to ask your questions or share your thoughts or opinions. Please be on mute throughout the webinar. With that, let's get started. Samir, I'll start with you. Just explaining loneliness and what it means to the LGBT community, particularly.
No, definitely. And I think, Ram, when we talk about loneliness, right, I would rather also take a step back and talk about loneliness in general and not just, during Corona, after Corona, and before Corona, like kind of ACDC, because the loneliness within the queer community, as we talked about, right, the plus ones, we saw so many of the plus ones, and I would add my own plus one. This has been there within the queer community for ages. And it's just because of there's so much of peer pressure, there's so much of family pressure, there's so much pressure at work because you definitely don't want to tell people that you're cured, how you come out. There's also pressure from the family about getting married. There's pressure from within the queer community about dating, about relationships, body image, fitting the particular idea of what a perfect gay is or a perfect lesbian is. This kind of leads to a lot of self-image issues, which in turn leads to loneliness, right? And so this loneliness is something that is so pervasive across the queer community that it's almost it hits each and every, I would say, queer person at some point in their life. And this is a journey that we have to go through and we have to face it. And especially in the current scenario where we are isolated in lockdown, this is hitting us more because there are so many other factors that when we're outside people that that take away our mind. We've got the grinder where we meet people for hookups for dating. We've got other validations that we get, but then within our isolation of Corona, we've just got to face ourselves. We've just got to look in the mirror. We've got to talk to ourselves. We've got to know ourselves and recognize ourselves. And that that is kind of a journey that has to be done in a much kind of a careful way, especially in terms of talking about psychology or talking with therapy. It's not something that we all just are right now forced in one house in one room at the same time, and it's definitely a downward spiral for so many of us that it's just we're lonely, and then because we're isolated we're more lonely, and then because we're more lonely we then kind of isolate ourselves from even other form of support networks or other friends that we can reach out to. So I think this is a problem that we really need to talk about, and I'm glad that we're having this session within these webinars.
Thanks, Amit, and thanks for joining us for this. Shalini, quick question for you. What are the common concerns around LGBT and mental health which you come across in your day-to-day practice?
Some of the very common concerns that are arising now in response to lockdown is an experience of being trapped. Because like Samir was saying earlier, one shared pool of resources for a lot of queer folk and trans folk in Bangalore and across the country, I'm assuming as well, is the experience of community, the experience of knowing that there are people who reflect my experience, who share my experience out there, who I can connect with. It can mean walking down the street and meeting with some of my queer friends. It can mean having a regular, sort of like a ritual that's part of my everyday routine where I get to be in contact with someone, or be able to have the autonomy to go out there and experience space. That is something that is challenged right now, naturally for most people in general, but especially for queer and trans folks. Being trapped has been actually really painful for a lot of people who are stuck with abusive family or abusive roommates. The choice to step out for fresh air is really limited right now. And I can't emphasize enough how much our experience of our physical bodies impacts our mental health. We may tend to look at mental health as this isolated experience of just our minds, but it isn't. It's really about how our bodies are, how our physical experience is on any given day, that truly significantly impacts our mental health. There's also issues around queer couples who are facing the experience of being stuck together, and a lot of relational difficulties are emerging. And that again is such a unique conversation, because as some of y'all from the queer community may be familiar with this experience of like queer timelines in queer relationships are different from heteronormative relationships. Sometimes there is a deep connection and you move in together at a very early stage, what larger society may diagnose as an early stage of the relationship. But that connection is so differently experienced for queer folks that that it is natural and wonderfully supportive to move in together at an early stage. But now, in response to lockdown, a lot of those early speed bumps get highlighted, because you're really like getting to know each other in a way that's way more intimate, way more personal and private than you're probably prepared for, because you don't have that autonomy, the agency to step out for a walk or have your, autonomous other life at work. So these are some of the main themes. Yeah.
Would both of you share like some of the few small activities which people can do to beat that loneliness and isolation, something which they can still practice from the confines of their own homes, and build a network or build a support system or a habit just by themselves also, where they have resources to just beat the feeling of being alone, the feeling of the challenges they're facing?
Sure, Ram. I think what I also wanted to talk about, right, like I wanted to type
So maybe your voice is breaking a bit.
Not that people are to. However, in general, okay, can you hear me now? Ram?
So maybe we're losing you. Now we can hear you.
Okay, Shalini, I continue like this. Okay, I'll let you continue.
I'm super curious what that was being said. I do want to hear what you were saying, Samir. One thing that I keep going back to around coping in times of lockdown and COVID is to not have to put the pressure on ourselves to reinvent a new wheel and try to look for new ways of coping, but to look back and see what are some of the ways in which I have coped well in the past. What are some of the ways in which I've survived difficult situations? What are some of my usual self-care practices that work for me? It can be something from, this is a particular kind of snack that I really like, that really works for me. Something as basic as that, to perhaps like continuing relationships, like conversations and friendships that have been working for me well, pre-lockdown as well, and to continue that as a form of, with a lot more intention and deliberation, as a form of like, this is what is going to keep me rooted and keep me feeling well. Because we're in such an unprecedented, extraordinary experience right now, it is natural to feel this urge to find new methods, pick up a new book, pick up a new hobby, pick up a new skill, as a form of, taking care of yourself in this super unique situation.
And there's also pressure that you should come out of the lockdown with a new skill or a new book or a new thing, which is unfair and
totally super unfair. And I think it's especially like there's so much, like you were rightly saying, the pressure to to do something spectacular because the circumstance is spectacular, it can be super heavy on your heart. So a lot of it can really be about what's already working well for me. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that did. Samir, are you here? Or do you want to join to that?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Shalini, for sitting in. And I think to add on to this, right, I think for extroverts, it's definitely a tougher time because they're so used to being social, right? And social is not just talking, picking up a phone and talking to someone, but being around people, being around, open spaces and being around with things that you can interact with. I think that makes a bigger difference. And what I've seen is I know a lot of my friends who are extroverts. What they're trying to do is they're actually scheduling a call, like a weekly call or like a weekly coffee meeting, or like how they would normally meet up their friends for a coffee or something. So they actually meet up for a coffee and they kind of, say Friday evening coffee, a Friday evening drink. So I actually have friends with a glass of wine or or a drink or a cocktail or something, and then all of them just kind of talking in as a group and being there together that do that. And similarly, we've got the other point that we talked about, and I wanted to go back to Shalini, your point, right, and Ram's point about the pressure about doing a lot. I think just surviving this lockdown itself should be an achievement. I don't think we need to talk about picking up new skills or doing something different. Just surviving, getting out of this is going to be a challenge for so many people. So I think this is in itself an achievement. There is pressure I can see, or I've seen actually, people posting, a lot of gay guys posting pictures about saying, "Oh, I made a 3-course meal." Then I have posting entire 30 minutes, which normally would take 2 hours. So then the pressure grows on for others within the community that, hey, I have to now cook better, I have to cook fancier food, I have to just kind of outsmart them all. And I think that pressure should be something that all of us should be aware of and say, hey, take a step back and say, hey, that's something that the other person is good at, doesn't mean that I also need to do. Because the way to connect, as we talked about, is definitely food is a common way to connect, and we connect and we talk. However, not get pressurized into doing what others are doing. I think that's the thin line that we have to manage.
Very true. Just for the clarification of everyone on the call, what the speakers are saying that do not necessarily pick up a new skill or read a new book. It's about not feeling the pressure that because everyone is saying, oh, because it's lockdown, I should pick up a new hobby or should learn something. It should not be a pressure that you have to do something. Obviously, you're more than welcome to pick up new hobbies, learn things, and new jobs, whatever else you want. Just want to clarify that. Quick question, and we'll just briefly touch upon the topic about domestic violence. Like, if you are in a lockdown where you are facing violence, what is the way out? And what could be some things you could do as an individual to survive through that?
I'll take this one, and I'm super open to hearing from you as well, Samir. One important thing to remember about being stuck in lockdown with a domestically violent, abusive household, whether it's family or friends or usually it's family, is to remember that if someone who is in a trapped situation with a family that's abusive, you've probably been there before with that family before lockdown as well. And again, because we're in an unprecedented situation, we're likely to feel pulled towards this experience of multiple layers of feeling trapped, which is completely valid. And it would be just as important to look at what helped me survive through those terrible days, through those terrible times of being stuck in an abusive situation, and to look at what will help me get through this day. reaching out can be super tricky if you're in a violent household. Reaching out to either someone in the house or outside can feel super tricky because your very safety is at stake. And so the idea of um, preparatory care becomes super important. It becomes super important to look out for those moments where there's some neutrality, where you know that, okay, violence is not happening in this moment. Person who usually gets violent with me is somewhere in the kitchen, somewhere in the bedroom. So in this moment, what do I do to make sure I will be okay today? What can I do to take care of myself? Do I have access to a cell phone where I can just text someone that I care about, someone who cares for me, and tell them that so far my day is okay, I'm fine today? Is it possible to assign a friendship, someone that I know will have my back, to keep checking in on me through text? That is, again, if a text messaging resource is available. Another thing to keep in mind is to locate one safe space in the house. Sometimes it can be like, go to the bathroom and just keep yourself there for 10 good minutes of the day to just be with your breath, and use your breath as a resource. To know that no matter what is going to happen today, in these 10 minutes, I have me, I have uh, my breathing, thriving body, and through my breath, I can just stay present with myself. Um, Again, none of these things are easy things to just reach out to and practice, because even though they may sound simple, they're not easy. It takes a certain amount of internal and external support system to think of these ideas as imaginative ways of self-care. And to just close up what I'm saying, having a preparatory system of care, whether it's with myself or in combination with some other folks who care about me, that becomes super important as a resourcing while the violence is not going on in this moment. Yeah.
Thank you. That was some really very helpful steps you shared. Sabir, would you add
Thanks, Shalini. I know it's something you're very passionate about, right? So I think I just wanted to add to this is domestic violence. There are so many different forms, right? It's not just like the movie Thappad where she gets slapped. So it's not just domestic violence. We've got verbal abuse. We've got emotional torture. There's so many forms of domestic violence that we need to be aware of. Because if that's something that's impacting us, we need to make sure we reach out help if we can, or as soon as we can, and as safe as we can. Also, another thing I think is always make sure you have your go-to bag, like a bag with money, your documents, your valuables, at least a pair of clothes that is ready and handy, that you can leave the house at any moment's notice, right? I think that's the point that we have to make sure that we all do, especially people who are in the domestic violence relationship. And also just make sure that you have your really close friends, relatives, neighbors very close to check up on you in a way that your partner is also being aware that the checkup is happening, because that also builds up pressure on your partner to make sure that that they are getting accounted for. There's accountability, right? So usually in a heteronormative relationship, there's the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, like if the the girl's parents, who will kind of touch base and who will constantly be there. So the husband would at least make sure that he tries to refrain from domestic violence, at least when the parents are around, or at least when they're checking up. Similarly, have a similar way that there is some kind of way to keep the partner accountable.
Thanks, Amir. So there's a thought on the chat about coping with loneliness, and I think it's wonderful. So I'm going to read it out, and I have you share probably your opinions on this. Like, do you agree with it? Supi Bhattacharya says that having a pet will change your definition of loneliness. Loneliness can be felt even if you live in a joint family or surrounded by friends. I agree with that. To cope with loneliness, you have to give back to the society. if you are an animal lover, feed the strays, or if you're involved in community activity, then you can come together and take initiatives like to cook food and supply to the currently worker community around you. So things like that. Does that work?
Absolutely. Pets give you, or animals in general, not just pets, but animals give you unconditional love, right? And then not just unconditional love, but pets also give you exercise when you take them out for a walk. And fresh air always does us good, especially for our mental health. So I think, yeah, pets
Thanks.
a way to go.
So
I would, if it's okay, I would like to also add that sometimes it may not be available for a lot of us to have pets. Like either it's not
true.
affordable,
Allowed.
or apartment buildings don't allow for animals to enter the space. And that can be super, like, it just breaks my heart that these restrictions have to take place. But I think taking a walk around your neighborhood can be so lovely to just find the street dogs and like share a biscuit with them. I recently, like, so I love animals, and my apartment building does not allow folks to have pets. And just a couple of days ago, I went out on a walk around my neighborhood and I found these little puppies, and their mother was with them as well. And she was very welcoming of people to come and share snacks with them. And it was just a very sweet moment where I just got a chance to sit with them and play. And it was very nourishing just for those few moments. It was super nourishing.
Thank you. And the question on body image issues are big in the gay community. The obsession with looks, appearance, and body is so toxic and cuts to one's self-confidence and makes one more lonely, right? Social media apps exacerbate that issues where how can one overcome these feelings of insecurity and loneliness? And this is not nothing to do with the lockdown. I think the added pressure of lockdown would be like, oh, I should not come out of the lockdown fatter than what I went into. So there is really a lot of pressure on body image, particularly in the gay community, in the larger LGBT community. Any thoughts on that?
Definitely. You I have a really close friend of mine. He actually sends me TikTok. I don't watch much of TikTok, but he sends me TikTok videos every day, at least 4 or 5 videos of all these hot guys doing all these different exercises of different body parts. And then he tells me saying that, you can do these exercises, and by the end of the lockdown, you will kind of, have a bigger chest, bigger bicep, and bigger arm. And it's just it's funny, and I'm saying it's funny, but then because at least I am aware of the pressure. But I think for others, the pressure comes a lot, especially within the gay culture, because you know we, and I wouldn't say gay people, but I say we as such within the community, we judge guys just based on the looks, right, or the body, or how they talk, or how they dress up. It's just so kind of body conscious, and that kind of helps us make just feel worse about what we do. And we think suddenly that there is this kind of 2-3 month break where we're going to make sure we just eat less and we exercise crazy like a hamster on a wheel. And then at the end of the 3 months, we're going to come out as a perfect body with the perfect biceps. But that's not it. We need to have a healthy body and a healthy mind, which doesn't mean like a uber six-pack abs body.
Thank you. But there is definitely and all these grinder, Planet Romeo, and everything, and the constant rejection people face because of the way people look definitely does take a big dig at self-esteem of people. Now, today we're going to talk about support systems. So, Samir, how have you built your support system, and how has it been helpful for you?
So I think for us within the queer community, our support system has to go beyond the family, and not just because our family may not be supportive, but it's also because we need to look at the non-traditional forms of support systems. There is a saying that says basically it takes a village to raise a child. But I think within the queer community, or maybe even the other, the other heterosexual communities also, it takes us to build a village actually to kind of live the adult life or within the queer community. So we have to build our own village. We need to have our own people because that's the only way we're going to have our support system. You cannot just have a partner or a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, and be our solid rock and support system because one person cannot be your,
Everything.
go-to person for everything, right? Just to give an example, I think maybe two examples I can give is, I remember like about a year back, I on the stairs in my house, and this is kind of like a middle of the night, and I fractured my shoulder, and I couldn't even get up, and I was like, okay, what do I do? But at that point, I knew actually my phone was with me, that I knew that I had my go-to person that I could just call and who would come and help me out. So I took my friends, close friends, they actually came there, took me to the hospital, and kind of got me what I needed. At the same time, kind of I had another friend, a really close dear friend. She helped me through my depression, right? She lived in a different city in Pondicherry, and and I wanted to give this example because this is kind of a long-term support. It's not just one-day support where you take to the hospital, going through depression, where she actually made sure that she invited me to her house and she took care of me personally, even when she was fasting herself in Ramadan. She made sure that I had food for me to eat throughout the day, and I ate right food at the right time, irrespective of whether within her family everyone was fasting. And this was just because of the strong kind of the support system that I built. And I think all of us need to look at bridges that we can build, and like those bridges that are there in Manipur that kind of keep on growing stronger and stronger and stronger over the years. Similarly, you need to have these non-sexual social relationships that can help us support each other. Shalini, do you want to chime in?
Yes. I also want to reframe our ideas of what we're needing to create as support systems now. I think what the COVID era and the lockdown has done to us is that it's held up a mirror to how systems of hyper-individualized living have failed us. It's really helping. This moment is helping me see that all the ways in which I was forced by the systems that I'm a part of, the normative culture, so to speak, the consumerist culture, so to speak, has forced me away from my friendships. But this moment has forced us to look at how important and vital friendships are, how life-saving friendships are. So much like what Samir was saying, I'm sitting with this recognition that this is a moment not so much to look at friendships as a coping, but to look at friendships as how do we prioritize deep, intimate, nourishing friendships, relationships, and human contact as a way of being well in general, and more so right now because it's this is a crisis, so we totally need it. But this also is a moment of looking at how do we once COVID ends, that doesn't mean we go back to a sense of what used to be normal, a sense of going back to our individualized lives. It takes work because it's not our fault that we are not able to sustain deep, nourishing friendships. Because these are demands of everyday life in order to survive. But this absolute free time, free time is a strange word. This complete openness that we've been thrown into because of the lockdown is kind of really forcing us to look at the reality of friendships being life-saving, friendships being vital to our existence because we need each other. We need to have each other's back. We need to nourish relationships and feed them, and therefore be nourished in return as well.
Thank you, Shalini. So there's a question, and this is so particularly from the aspect of people who are on the forefront of this COVID response in a certain sense. where they're either working with the LGBT community on the ground or the migrant population, which is dealing with this exodus with very limited support from government structures, who are on the ground, are doing this work, but feel so much of helplessness, so much of despondency and despair. How to keep going and keep building yourself so that you can still continue to volunteer and support and help when you feel that you are up against such a gigantic mountainous task.
One starting point is to acknowledge that the despair is real. Like if we're feeling hopeless, that is because the reality on the ground is in its truest form, the rawest form, really painful. Like the multiple levels of systemic failure in our lives, in our society right now, is in our faces. There is no denying it. It's been there in the past, but somewhere in this time, everything is exaggerated and right in our faces. So the experience of despair is completely valid, and it helps to start with an acknowledgement that yes, this is a truly desperate, painful time for many of us, and many, like, for a lot of us, it's about inconvenience and discomfort. But for a lot of us in society, it is about life or death right now. So what has helped me and a lot of the folks I share community with is to again prioritize nourishment. It is effective, like to frame it as effective activism. It's effective activism if we're able to make space for care of ourselves, enough space to rest and nourish ourselves, make space for silly joy, make space for being able to, like, if I'm in company of someone else, to actively make space for silliness, lightness, watching something on TV that will make me laugh, making space for taking naps. That, like, I can't emphasize enough how vital that is to replenish these depleting resources, because we are on the ground doing a lot of work with communities who are in immediate need of relief and ration work. And it's not sustainable if we're burning out. If we crash and burn, then who's going to hold up the structure, right?
True.
So much of it comes down to having each other's back by, like, really prioritizing nourishment and care.
True. We can only help others if we are able to help ourselves and be in a frame of
Definitely.
health, mental and physical, to support others. Go ahead.
Ram and Shalini, just to add on to this, right? I think in general, marginalized and minority communities they always bear the brunt of the worst. And we've seen that. And it's always for them, this is before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, unfortunately, they will continue to get the worst out of everything, right? But at this point, what we're seeing is at least their issues are being highlighted, they're getting visible. And I think it's for us, the least that we can do is to make sure that we highlight them, we just acknowledge them as we talked about, but also make sure we make other people aware of it, right? It's not something that a single person can solve all the issues. However, at least just making as many people aware of these issues and making them aware that there are these communities, there are these people who are impacted much more than us sitting in a lockdown, in a house where we can order in a food and we can, cook and we can eat. This is much tougher for them. Also, we've got to make sure that we give them the voice to talk, right? Because a lot of the places we see their voices being usurped by different people and leading and for them. Let's also give them pass the mic to them. Let them also ensure that their pain and their voice are heard.
Thanks, Amir. One trailing theme which has been in the question is about depression, anxiety, and particularly around the aspect of financial security where a lot of people have lost jobs, a lot of people are not sure how long their jobs are going to be, and for a lot of people who have lost their means of livelihood because of the lockdown. So, any thoughts on dealing with that? Because a lot of this is beyond the control of the individual, and so how do you like get through the situation in this?
So what I would kind of advise is a multi-pronged approach. A is to just look at our finances holistically. How can we ensure that our buck can last long? How do we ensure that the limited resources that we have can go on for a much longer time that we have currently? Can we cut down on Netflix? Can we cut down on ordering in? Can we cut down on things that we can and ensure that we can last it longer. At the same time, can we also make sure that we brush up on our skills that can enable us to be in the forefront whenever the job market is kind of again up and ticking. I think do that. Make sure that we at least honing our skills. And third, which is kind of the most important, is network, because I think a lot of the jobs are going to be now filled in, I think, across with networking, which even was earlier, but especially now, because I think there's lots, many people applying for a very few jobs. So if you're there in front of the line because of your networking and making sure at least you highlight that you're the right candidate, that gives us at least a much bigger opportunity. And I know Price Circle does a lot of higher recruitment for the LGBT community, and then we have other groups also, but definitely reach out to the other groups.
Yeah, we do work with a range of organizations for recruitment, and I'll share the link of the resume portal. Please do share your resume there, and if you have a relevant opening with a client, we will be happy to connect that and take that forward. Shalini, any thoughts on this?
Yes. Couple of things. Okay, firstly, I want to say something about rage, like an experience of outrage. When rage comes from a place of shame and self-doubt, it can really slip us into a place of inaction and hopelessness and helplessness, which in which a normative society profits from. But a rage that comes from a sense of injustice, a rage that comes from a sense of solidarity, like being able to experience anger that is coming as a response to recognizing that what's happening right now is a systemic failure that's letting me down and a lot of people like me down. Can really help us move towards action and creativity. And so I feel like just naming that as when you're stuck in a place of losing your job, your livelihood, it can really, like, your rage can go two ways. My wish for us collectively is to look at our sense of indignation at injustice as something that can fuel our creativity. And creativity can be organizing and bringing together a whole lot of us who are in the same boat and looking at what can we do together in this terrible situation that we're in. Or it can also mean taking advantage of how everything is online right now, offer workshops of a certain skill that you have, connect with other organizations that are offering freelance work or consultation opportunities. But to remember that this moment of losing your job is a form of injustice, and it's a valid response to feel angry. It's a valid response to have that sense of indignation at the situation, and also to use opportunities or resources like the helpline that Pride Circle and SPIF are offering, where you can have someone offer emotional labor to you, who can give you some amount of space to make sense of this sudden shock, this loss of employment, all the emotional responses that can come with it, and probably help you even find that creativity, find the energy within you to do something, to take action about what has happened to you.
There's a comment from a person, and they say that I really feel depressing that these days you can't really foresee what's going to happen next. We can't even talk to anyone about these days and neither meet them. So, I mean, there could be one aspect of where you feel so, in a sense, isolated, self-isolated in a certain sense, where you don't even want to reach out to another person and share with them. What could be the best ways to get out of that place? Yeah, go ahead, Samir.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Ram. So I think, apathy is maybe that's what it sounded like. And I think apathy is something that we need to definitely watch and ensure that that's something that doesn't creep in, because we do not want to be disinterested in life, right? And I think we sure, and I'm not saying we have to be full energy and we have to do all these learn 10 skills and do so many things, but that doesn't mean the other extreme of being disinterested. It can just be meaning just take care of yourself, just relax, rest, watch Netflix and chill. We can do so many other activities that help us recharge our battery, right? And just for each person individually, find out things that make them happy. So for me, I cannot cook, right? For me, cooking is just making green tea, and the green tea it has to be in a kettle because I can't even boil water in a pot, right? So it has to be the kettle, green tea. But then you know what I love doing? Washing utensils. Like I'll take out utensils that have already been washed and I just wash them. Why? Because it's just a task, that I'm doing, and when I'm doing in the task, is just kind of my mind is focused on that, and I'm living in that moment. I'm watching those utensils being washed and kind of being in that moment. That helps us, me being mindful of things, right? So that's definitely one of the things that I do.
So it's breaking from that chain of apathy and doing one activity which you are interested in and which gives you a little joy, if I got that right.
Yeah.
Shalini, any thoughts on that? And before you put thoughts on that, I just want to add this question as well, which we got in the chat, is how to refrain from doing the things repeatedly, which you regret after doing. So the person knows that this is something they're going to regret doing, but you just keep doing it. You can't break that cycle of repetition of a task which you honestly will regret after doing that.
To quickly respond to that question, if it is something that you're noticing as a repeated pattern, as an enduring theme over a long period of time, and there is an experience of like helplessness and not feeling like that experience is consensual, like you're not consenting to that experience with yourself, it might be something to like have a deep look at with the help of a professional, perhaps. If counseling or psychotherapy is accessible to you, it might be very, very helpful to just look at what deeper processes might be at play. But one quick way of looking at it can be to see that as like when we're doing something that doesn't feel consensual, we're likely to be distracting ourselves from something else that's happening. We're likely to be numbing ourselves from something that may be too painful to feel. So if we're able to maybe just make some room in ourselves to notice what is it that's so painful that I don't want to feel, and be able to just name it, not have to do anything about it, but just name and admit and acknowledge to yourself that this is what I'm feeling and it's really painful. It may be a little easier on yourself to then engage in whatever that repeated activity is that's starting to feel debilitating in its repetition. It's something that I remember, I was having a conversation with Ram earlier, and you were mentioning this thing, the differentiation between distraction and engagement. And I think that also is one of the antidotes to apathy, because apathy, again, is a sort of emotional numbness, emotional inaction. And numbness is usually a response to something that we are not feeling equipped to feel, to experience, because it's too painful. And if we can find the slightest, most kindest ways of engaging with what is it that's causing us that amount of pain, the hope is at least you'll start having a dialogue with that part of you. That part of you is not going to be this mysterious, hidden away thing that you don't know what it is, but to just be able to say, yep, this is here, this is painful. I don't know how to live with it, but this is my reality right now.
Thank you.
Ram, just to go back to that question also, right? I think to the person who actually asked that question, right, I would also maybe check with the person, with themselves, is, why do they think this is a habit, right? Is that...
Can people mute? You're not speaking, please. Okay. Go ahead, Samir.
Thanks. Yeah. So for, especially for, do they think that it's a bad habit, or is that detrimental for them, or is that something that society considers is not to be done, right? And it could be as simple as I sleep for 10 hours every day, and which is much more than the others, right? It's maybe your body needs it, and that's why you're consciously doing it. So make sure that we are not hard on ourselves about any habits, and at least try to understand why or where the habits are coming from, or that habit is coming from, and is it really detrimental to you, or is it actually something that which is fine, that I really shouldn't be sleeping 10 hours and I should be sleeping ideally 8 hours, but that's not something that's affecting you, right? But at least then that's something that shouldn't be your focus, and that shouldn't be something that you should beat yourself up with. But if it's something that's definitely harming you, I think definitely reach out to someone professional for help.
Thank you. Last question here on digital exhaustion. There's only so much of Netflix you can and chill. There's only so many webinars and online courses because every single thing is online. How do you deal with that?
I'll go with that real quick. I really see this intense engagement with digital platforms right now as a way of us trying to escape this sudden reality that's been forced upon us. And honestly, it's a very valid emotion to have. It's a very valid urge to want to escape, because we are in a lockdown. We are in a sense, there is an experience of being trapped. So wanting to escape is absolutely valid. And I honestly feel it's okay to be, watching way more Netflix, watching way more TV, sleeping way more. It's absolutely okay. But that being said, when you're noticing fatigue, when you're noticing exhaustion, and it's starting to feel not supportive to be watching a lot of Netflix, doing a lot of digital work, one way of giving yourself a break is to see what is accessible in your physical experience to enter your body, because the escape is happening in a way that you're just leaving your body as well. The fatigue exhaustion is happening because we're stuck in our mind place and our bodies are neglected. So is it possible to maybe just spend 10 minutes of a day stretching? Doesn't have to be a workout, doesn't have to be yoga, but just stretch your muscles, let your blood flow, because your body is in a sort of a shock right now. All of our bodies are in a sort of a shock right now. So to just make space for like any kind of gentle, kind engagement with the body. It can be breathing, it can be stretching, it can be walking in circles in the house, it can be just lying down and noticing that you are lying down for a good 10 minutes and not have to do anything else. It can be even cooking, making more space for cooking, making snacks, cleaning the house, and to not have to do those simply as chores, but as things where your body is involved and you're not thinking much. Your mind isn't being engaged intensely.
Thank you for that. Last closing tips, like 3 things you could do, and there's a question, Nelson has shared some beautiful thoughts on walks, nature, cycling, gardening, Reddit subgroups, online safe spaces, music, mental health buddies, and so on. Any of these methods people can use to build that support network, to build that mental health resilience. Closing comments on that. Shalini?
So,
Yeah.
so Ram, I think one of the things that, just going back, right? I think one of the things that I do is I use screen time on my iPhone. So it kind of locks me out from doing a few things after some more time. Also, I ensure that I at least try to keep a schedule. I actually dress up during the day, so to ensure and then post and get different set of clothes, do different things, and in that mood of doing that thing and not switching on to my TV or not switching to Netflix or because we all need that shot of dopamine that we get from the TV or these addictive social media, right? Because that's how they build the algorithms to ensure that it's as addictive as possible. So try to ensure that at least I reduce my time, even if I cannot do a complete detox of it, but schedule the time, reduce my time. Also, as Shalini talked about, right? I definitely do the chores in the house, the utensils, the mopping, the sweeping. That is tires me. So I really don't do stretching. I don't even do yoga because this itself is my exercise for the day. And I think that's been my getaway from the social media.
3 things that I would share. One, kind of connected to what Sameer was saying, structure can be very kind. Like it can be a very wonderful, kind, liberating experience, paradoxically, to have structure in a time where everything feels so unstructured. So have a routine, have some kind of a ritual that you can fall back on. Second, remember that yes, this is a super extraordinary time in all of our lives, in the world as such, but you've been through difficult experiences in your life before. You've been through worse, maybe, I don't know, but you've been through tough times, and to trust that things that got you through those times can get you through these times as well. You can use your resources, your self-care strategies, your internal strength can totally come in handy now as well. You don't have to build new resources necessarily. And third is survival is enough. You don't have to come out of the lockdown being extra wonderful, extra fit, learning new skills. It's absolutely okay to just make it through, to just survive.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation with really great insights. Uh, for everyone on the call, please note that this is a series. The next topic we're talking about on 21st is tackling challenges among the trans community. We have 2 brilliant speakers from the trans community talking about that, so please do join us for that. Share with your friends. There's also a helpline available throughout this week, so please do utilize this opportunity to reach out to LGBT-friendly counselors to seek support from people, and do share it in your network because we never know who needs this help. And there's also suicide prevention gatekeeper training at the end of the series on 24th. You can sign up for that in the links provided in the poster right up there and also in our social media. With that, thank you very much for joining, and now I pass it on to Francis.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Sameer, for this wonderful conversations. Thank you, Ram, for so expertly moderating this conversation. And thanks to everyone who participated and made this so interactive. I looked at your chats. Some of them were so painful and heart-wrenching. I really urge you to please call the helpline. There are professionals on standby to talk to you. Please use this service. This has been set up for a reason. The numbers at the bottom of the slide. I'll leave it on for a couple of seconds before I transition. And we love feedback. We want to know what you thought of this session. This is the short URL. It's sfdc.co/beatlonely loneliness, the B and the L are in capitals. It's a very short form. Please let us know so we can improve the sessions that are coming up in the series. You don't have to note down any of these links right now because we'll send you a summary link that takes care of everything. I also urge you, if you have some free time, to visit trailhead.com. You can learn Salesforce. Salesforce is a very hot skill right now, and you can learn it for free. You can also learn equality content. There's leadership and management content from the Drucker Institute. So this is an example of our equality content there. Again, no need to memorize the link. I have a slide coming up that puts everything together. Finally, there was conversation about people who've lost jobs, and it's quite disturbing, but we're happy to let you know that Salesforce is still recruiting. This is the short link. It's sfdc.co/outpostjobs. But this is the only link that you'll need. And I asked someone from the Outpost team to paste it in the chat box here as well. It's sfdc.co/key links. The K and the L are in capital. All the links that I showed so far are here. They're handy. Your feedback form is available. So please use this. We really want to hear from you. With that, thank you everyone and have a good night.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, our speakers. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It was a wonderful conversation, and see you on Thursday again. Thank you.